Connecting people and sharing experiences. This is the Retirement Years Podcast. Your hosts are Mary Ellen French and Dave Wing.
Hi there, I'm Mary Ellen.
And I'm Dave, and today we have a great episode to share with you. Well, they're all great, right, Mary Ellen? They're all
They
great.
are, Dave.
Mary Ellen and I had the opportunity to chat with David and Susan Schwartz about a very unique book they wrote about Costco. The book is entitled The Joy of Costco, A Treasure Hunt from A to Z. And this labor of love took them years to complete, and the result is a fun and informative book about the big box retailer.
David and Susan are retirees who live in a 450 square foot apartment near Central Park. Imagine that during COVID.
Yeah.
And what they did is they turned their love of Costco into a fun and informative book. Like, I love this book. And in order to do that, they actually, you're going to hear from them, but they ended up creating their own publishing company.
Right.
So I think I've mentioned on a previous season that I'm in the process of writing a book. So I was really excited to meet these two people because who knows, there may be a project we can work on in future.
Well, and you're in a good position to pitch that now because you've had them as a guest. Yeah. And as you said, they did put a lot of work into gathering a team to publish their book. The idea even to do it formed in 2016. They continue to work on the project for the next 3 years. And, you know, one thing they'll mention when you hear their interview is they had to devote a significant portion of their savings to the project. Mm-hmm. But, and this is important for all of us, they risked only what they felt they could lose. And they'll explain more about that. But that's important too. If you have a dream and you want to go after it, you got to make sure that if that doesn't quite work out the way you thought, that you've got a place to fall back to. Yeah.
So I have the book here in front of me. I love the way it's organized. So the first, 30 some pages, I guess, are all about sort of the history of where Costco came from, like its roots and a brief history of Costco, if you will. Lots of pictures. And this book is not like, this book was not commissioned by Costco. Costco invested $0 into it. This really was a labor of love written by David and Susan. But Costco was very generous in terms of allowing them access. Mm-hmm. And initially, you'll hear from them, but initially saying, no, please don't write this book. And then eventually moved to, okay, you're probably going to write it anyway. So, if we could have a look at it, if we could make sure that it's accurate, we would really appreciate it. So it was released this year, 2023, and you can find it at Costco. Costco warehouses across Canada and the US are carrying it. And you can also buy it online at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And honestly, I think you could probably find it at pretty much any independent bookstore near you.
Yeah, I think you could.
Yeah.
And David and Susan, when they were brought to our attention, we were thrilled to have a chance to speak with them. They've been very busy promoting the book because they're not just the authors. When you're the publisher as well, those are two full-time jobs. And this couple's doing both. So they've been very busy setting up chances to interview and make different appearances in order to promote their book. So the fact that they took time to speak with us means a lot. And it turned out to be what I know Mary Ellen and I believe anyway is a very entertaining interview. And you're going to find out some very interesting facts about everyone's favorite big box store, Costco. And here's how the interview went. So welcome, David and Susan, to the podcast. And before we jump right into the book, which is why we're here today, we'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Okay, well, I'll start. And I think that one of the things I'll say for both of us is that we've each had varied careers. We sort of have career ADD in a way. And I think in each case, we've always been very passionate about what we're doing at that particular time, but then we end up doing something else. So I started off absolutely convinced that I wanted to spend my whole career as a foreign policy and defense policy specialist. I went to Stanford and MIT and got a doctorate in defense policy at MIT, and then went on to the US State Department and to the Brookings Institution. And I was absolutely convinced that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And then I was sent to London for a year, and I fell in love with London, and I decided I wanted to stay there. And I became a businessman. I went to work at an investment bank called Goldman Sachs, and I loved that, and I wanted to do that for the rest of my life. They had other thoughts. They downsized me, and I became a headhunter in London for the financial services area. And then I did that for about 5 years, and Goldman asked me to come back as head of HR for the investment banking division in London, which I did for a couple of years, and then they moved me back here. And then I decided I want to go back to headhunting. So I became a headhunter. And when I came back to New York, that's when I met Susan. And in 2005, we decided to do headhunting together. So we've been working together since 2005. And in 2013, I had the idea for a book about an Italian physicist named Enrico Fermi. I started working on that. And in 2015, Susan very graciously said, David, why don't you just quit everything else and work on the book? You'll enjoy the journey much more. And that's what I've been doing ever since is writing. Susan, what about you?
Equally variable. So I went to University of Pennsylvania, got a degree in urban studies, and then did the obvious thing, which was to become a pastry chef. I had been accepted at graduate school for city planning, also at Penn. I got a merit scholarship, in fact, and deferred admission 3 years, which was long enough for them to still send me the alumni catalog. I worked as a baker for 2 years, and then much to my parents' I'm not sure what word to use here. My parents were a little surprised I decided to move to France, at which point they said, time to talk to a career counselor. And you can do that. So I wound up applying to business school from abroad and went to Columbia for business school and got an MBA in marketing. Straightened up for a little while and worked in corporate America, first at Nabisco for about 7 or 8 years, and then at General Foods for one very brief year that I found really motivating to go get another job, put it that way. And so what I did is I decided to do one rainy February Sunday evening was I decided, you know what, life's too short. What do I really want to do before I'm gone? And what I decided to do is get a job working freelance, making TV commercials. And so I did that. At the age of 35, I became a production assistant at $150 a day and managed to work about 180 days that first year, which was pretty good. Certainly wasn't my salary in General Foods as a product manager on Jell-O, but it was pretty good. And then did that for 12 years, met David. As he said, we started headhunting together. And then the year when I told him, just quit headhunting, just enjoy the journey, you got 1 year left. I spent that 1 year doing tenant rights work, not tenants like the game, but tenant rights work, because we live in a building that's got rent regulated apartments. And it occurred to me that there are problems in our building and probably problems around the rest of the district. And so the following year, I applied for and was appointed to the local community board, where I now serve as a volunteer and have for about 6 or 7 years. And I'm now actually the co-chairman of the Parks and Environment Committee. So that's been very rewarding. But I think then the story switches back over to David of how we got to this place where the book named Costco.
So in 2016, I just been finishing the book about Fermi, and I was thinking about next projects. I had thoroughly enjoyed the Fermi book. Susan and I had traveled all over the place, both in the United States and in Europe, as part of the research and the writing of the book. And she was actually, very involved in the book. It wasn't just me. She was involved not only in helping out on the research. She is the best archival photographer in the world. I will tell you that, absolutely. But she and I were talking, and I was coming up with ideas that she would say, that doesn't involve enough travel. Oh my God, that's so boring. One thing or another. And then finally, at one point, she turned to me and said, why don't we write a book together? We could write a book about Costco. We both love Costco. It would be a lot of fun and involve a lot of travel. There's a lot of Costco's all over the place. She said we could even go to China. They're planning on opening in China. And so
there's just a few problems here, just to be honest. First is I'd never written a book, so I don't know why I thought I could. The second problem, and these go in increasing levels of severity, if you will. The second one is that this is 2016 and nobody had heard of COVID. So travel was a lot easier. And then probably the most serious problem was that Costco is a lovely company, but they're very modest, and they had no interest in having a book written about them. So it took us 2 years to meet Jim Sinegal, the surviving co-founder, and Craig Jelinek, the CEO. And Jim spent 6 hours with us that first day in August, and we were just giddy with delight. I mean, he took us to lunch at Costco. I just felt like my world would never be the same. It was really great. And he, beginning and the end of it, he said, "No book about Costco. No, no, no." We thought, fine, we're great with this level of no book about Costco. But 2 weeks later, he called and said, "Listen, I've thought about it, and really, I don't want, no book. Like, we don't want a book about Costco. Good luck. I can't stop you, but good luck." So
at which point I said, "Listen, we're disappointed, but we're going to continue anyway." And he said, "Well, I can't stop you." So that's where it stood for a few years.
Not a few. It stood that for 3 years. For 3 years, we kept updating them. This is what we're doing. We would send them emails. Sometimes he'd reply, sometimes he wouldn't. And then Easter weekend of 2021, we got an email from Jim Sinegal saying, "Listen, we think we should make sure that the book is accurate. So would you like to come for a meeting?" We said, "Absolutely." And at the time, I had a broken kneecap from falling in Central Park. We're both avid bird watchers. That's how we survived the pandemic. We live really close to Central Park. Our apartment is indeed 450 square feet. Right now, we're in the east wing of the 450 square feet. Since we live here and work here, it was pretty hard in March and April and May and June of 2020 to just keep your head pulled together. At any rate, so we went and met Jim, and we've done the book completely independently of Costco. They did not support us at all financially. This is all our fault, if you will. We take sole responsibility for it, but they were very generous with their time and access to people. And Jim was really just beyond kind in terms of introducing us to people. There's a picture in the book of us tasting hot dogs outside Chicago, and the hot dog factory. That was tremendous. We got to spend an overnight in a warehouse watching them get what they call showtime ready. They were really kind to us, but they still are not. They are selling the book at the warehouse, but they really,
it's an unnatural act for them. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah. No, I got that. So, okay. Tell me what inspired you to write the book. I mean, you mentioned, that you both loved Costco. Tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Well, Costco is a really interesting business model. For those who don't know, it's what's called a big box store. It's a warehouse membership place. You have to pay either $60 or $120 a year to be able to go there and shop. And they highly curate the product line. So it's 3,800 items. That's it. To put this in perspective for you, a supermarket will have about 40,000 items, and a Walmart will have about 140,000 items. So when you go to Costco, you cannot find every kind of cereal. You cannot find every kind of mustard or cookies. It's highly curated. And what they're looking for is top quality at rock bottom prices. And the way they do that is they only mark things up at most 14%. So you can be assured that what you're getting is a great price and great quality.
That to us was the essence of the excitement, is that you go in to one of these warehouses, they're huge, but the products have been very highly curated and you never know what you're going to find. That ceiling 3,800 forces them to rotate in and out on a fairly regular basis. So you go in and keep your eyes open, and you'll find something that's really, really interesting.
There's probably no place else in the world where you can go in to pick up your prescription drugs and then also suddenly decide to buy a $100,000 piano.
It's true.
Yeah. Or a canoe or a pumpkin pie. I mean, and when we go, we walk up and down every aisle because it's literally a treasure hunt. You never know what you'll find. There's nobody who can tell me they went into Costco expecting to find everything bagel flavored cashews. Just nobody. And then you see them, and the price is great, and the quality is tremendous. And then you go back and buy 2 more bags and give them to your friends. That's Costco.
Well, and you hope that when you go back that they're still there, because my experience with Costco has been, if I see something, I get it, because for that reason that you were talking about earlier, when it's highly curated, you cannot trust that it will still be there in a few weeks because there'll be new stuff.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly right.
And what's interesting to us about all the travel, so we've now been to at least one warehouse in each of the 46 US states that have a Costco, plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., and then 13 other countries. So we've traveled 220,000 miles. We've been to over 200 warehouses. We've sort of lost track now. But what's interesting is that 40% of the product will be regional. So it's really different wherever you go. And the food court items are different. So for example, in Montreal, we enjoyed poutine at the food court.
Mm-hmm.
And that's nowhere else. Or
you can't find poutine in the United States. So, this is the kind of regional differentiation that they're very good at.
And it makes it a lot of fun just to see how it varies around the world.
So the book itself, the physical part of the book, it's very eye-catching. It draws you in because it's user-friendly. And in your journey to get there, it is. Of course, our listeners can't see that, so why would I say that? But so we'll talk more about the content and the organization. But first of all, the book itself, you make the bold choice to say, you know what? Why don't we publish it ourselves? And again, being a retirement podcast, we may have listeners who dream that they've got that book inside of them, and then they start worrying about, how would I ever get it out into the world? And so for their information, how did that process work for you?
Well, it was a long and winding road. And I think the most important thing to know is that we were very grateful and lucky that 22 publishers turned us down. So we had a literary agent who's great, and he sent the pitch out to 24 publishers. 22 said no because Costco wouldn't commit to the book. And the other 2 gave us offers that were sufficiently motivating that we said, you know what, let's just do it ourselves. Now, at this point, I want to warn everyone, don't try this at home, kids. It's really hard. But I will say that if you want to do something badly enough, keep with it, because if you just put one foot in front of the other, you can pretty much do anything you want. I mean, at this age, I can't be a ballerina now or a professional figure skater, but I can do other stuff, if you just put your mind to it. So that's what we did.
Yep.
We started learning about publishing. We both love books.
We both have loved books for a very long time. And, I always had this fantasy that I would be a publisher one day. So I had no idea what it involved. There are a lot of things that have to come together. You have to find a printer. You have to find a distributor. You have to find a production, someone who will help you produce the book. And that involves graphic design and typography. And then, you make a lot of decisions along the way. It's not all glamorous. It's sort of how heavy should the carton be? How many books should be in a carton? We didn't know that basically the upper limit for a carton is 40 pounds because people can't carry more than 40 pounds in a carton, comfortably. And so there are all these things that you learn along the way, but we did learn them. And we were lucky. We were very, very lucky to connect with a team that was able to produce this book. I mean, it was
the first, if I may, the first most important thing was our agents, Jim Levine and Courtney Paganelli at Levine Greenberg Roston. Unbelievable. When we came to them, we were still thinking we would be doing a corporate history, and they're both Costco fans. And they looked at us and said, "What? No. Your audience is your fellow Costco fans." And then they were the ones actually who suggested the A to Z Q&A format. And we're eternally grateful. And then the next thing that happened was we found a top-notch art director, Bonnie Siegler at 8.5 New York. She's unbelievable. And we had a great illustrator, Martin Hargreaves, who's from England, and you actually draws with pen and ink, not computer illustrated. So, once you have those key components in place, then you just start piling on top of it. But we really, all along the way, we never wanted to think of it as being self-published and, just kind of a dinky project. So in fact, our first print run was 100,000 books. So we danced with real conviction on this thing.
And having decided that we decided to print 100,000 books for a number of reasons. Number one, it turns out that that's the lowest. That's the amount of published books that gets you the lowest per unit cost, because they have to change plates after 100,000. You printed 100,000, and that costs a lot of money. So we chose 100,000 for that reason, also because we could afford to lose that amount of money if the book just didn't sell at all. And I think that's very important for someone who's going into publishing to understand that sometimes with the best, intelligence and advice, everyone gets it wrong and the book doesn't sell. And so you have to be willing to lose everything that you're putting into it. And we took that decision. It's a risky decision, but we took that because we know that, we still have a comfortable retirement if all of that, if we have to have a very large pulping party. So
and then the next thing we were very lucky with is that we managed to get a printer and a distributor, sales and distribution company to take us on, even though we're what's called a single title publisher. But because the print room was so large, we sort of skirted around that. But I'd say that the really key thing was the desire to do this and to do it together. And we have different strengths and weaknesses. David doesn't worry, I handle all the worrying, that kind of thing. So we work together well.
Well,
And
it sometimes changes. So I mean, it's usually true that she does all the worrying and I'm just sort of Mr. Optimist. But then there are times when I get very worried and very anxious, and she turns into Mrs. Optimist. So,
but we both have an approach toward life that this is not a dress rehearsal, and you really have, a full life that you can spend. And we like to think of this as the back half, the second half of our lives, and not just retire. A lot of our friends are retired. That's great. A lot of them are doing really interesting things. We decided to do this, and it's just like, well, let's give it a go and see what happens.
I want to go back to something you said about how you organize the book. So I love that it's in alphabetical order. You literally organize it from A to Z. So tell us how did that help you organize your thoughts? And how did it work as a guide for you to share all the information that, you thought fellow Costco lovers would love to know?
Well, it actually did not help us organize our thoughts. The reason it was all over the place. And the reason we did it was because it replicates that experience of walking through Costco and the randomness of all of it. Go from toothpaste to cashews to ping pong table. It made it a little bit of a challenge in some ways. We actually, I don't think he'd mind if I tell you that Jim Sinegal himself, the co-founder, was the one who said, "You don't have a queue yet. How is that possible? Quality. Costco's all about quality." So Jim didn't want a book, but he did help us write that Q section. We also needed a section for X. So we went to Jalapa, which is in Mexico, and it's where jalapeno peppers are from, because in Mexico, that's what they put on their Costco hot dogs. So it was a little bit fun and sometimes a challenge and sometimes really hard to find,
But what we effectively did was we, at the very beginning, before we wrote anything, we just wrote a list of topics from and then sorted them out into alphabetical order. Some of those topics ended up not in the book, and some topics we missed initially in that first run, and we added them later. I'll give you an example. Is under E, you'll find emergencies, and we didn't have that in our original list, but we thought of that later on. I think there must have been some hurricane or some flood somewhere, and we thought to ourselves, Costco does some very interesting things when there are emergencies. We should have that as a section. So it was a fluid process too.
For sure.
So now we get to some of the fun stuff. And when Mary Ellen came to me with this idea, with the information she sent me, were some of those nuggets that just makes you kind of go, what? How is that possible? Some of those interesting facts about a company that, well, we know Costco's large. And like you have mentioned, it changes quite often what's in there. I always go grudgingly, and then I come out with, I clearly put in the majority of the items in the cart. But that aside, so what are some of the facts, some of the interesting nuggets that are in there, and that makes people go, I would have never guessed that?
Okay, well, I mean, one of the more famous ones is that they sell more hot dogs than all
7 times more
hot dogs than all major league stadiums combined.
Wow. That
includes Canadian stadiums as well as American stadiums.
And of course, since right now it's September, and here in the US, I assume elsewhere around the world, pumpkin pie season is upon us. Costco sells 6 million pumpkin pies a year, but only between September and December. So if you want pumpkin pie, get it now.
They sell half of the world's cashews.
And half of the world's olive oil.
They are the largest single purveyor of wine in the world.
And if the employees are unbelievably loyal, if you make it through the first year of employment, not that that's difficult to do, but if you do, the turnover rate is less than 9%, which is unheard of in America.
I once asked a senior executive whether Costco is the largest pizza purveyor in the world. And he thought for a moment. He said, we don't have really good numbers on that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we are.
I wouldn't be surprised either. The pizza's great.
The thing we love most about Costco, which we haven't touched on yet, is they do the right thing when no one's even looking. It's just how they roll. They just do the right thing. So, for example, during COVID, they did not lay anybody off. Anybody my age or older got full pay to stay home. And everybody else who went to work got time and a half. And that speaks volumes about what they're like.
Yeah.
It's really, and this is not altruism, Jim Sinegal would say. It's just good business to treat your employees well.
Because they stay on, and they're loyal ambassadors for your company, and they know their job really well. So when you walk, we had the privilege of of watching a depot, one of the distribution centers at work. And these are people who have been around an average of 10, 12, 15 years, and they know exactly how to move product in and out of those distribution centers. Those distribution centers are basically empty by the end of the day, moving in and out. Another interesting fact for those of you who are watching this is that listening to this is that the rotisserie chicken, when it comes out of the oven, is time stamped. They don't talk about this, but it's time stamped. And after 2 hours, the container is pulled from the shelf and the chicken is used for other purposes. Now, why do they do that? It's not because of safety. It's simply because it doesn't taste as good after 2 hours. Mm. So they move it out. Yeah. They use it for chicken salads or chicken tacos or chicken soup or any of the things that they can use chicken for in the deli section. But they're very concerned that the member has the best quality taste experience from the rotisserie chicken that they can possibly have. And that means pulling the chicken after 2 hours.
So the chicken is one of the iconic items, and people often say that's a lost leader. Same thing with the hot dogs. That's not true. It's a myth we'd like to bust. They have found a way to manufacture it themselves so that the price can stay as low as it is. But we have to really talk about where the rotisserie chicken first started, David.
Oh, yeah. Well, the rotisserie chicken started in Montreal at the Marché Central warehouse. Two employees there were looking at Steinberg's, and Steinberg's was selling rotisserie chicken. And they looked at each other and said, we should be able to do that. So they negotiated with a local farmer to get chickens. They negotiated with an oven manufacturer to get an oven. They brought them in, and this was when some of the senior people in the organization were away, and they came back from vacation and saw what was going on. So, what are you doing? What are you doing? Chickens? And they said, yeah, we sold 6,000 this week.
And they said, carry on.
They said, wow. And the news got to home office in Seattle, and soon it was all over the world.
I loved that story when I read that. Like, shout out to Quebec on that one.
Yeah. But back to the whole thing about retirement, I'll let you know that half of the workforce at Costco is part-time and half is full-time. And we've met a number of people who have retired from jobs and then were kind of bored at home and then decided to get a job working at Costco just because they wanted to be around other people. And Costco loves that. So we've met people we met a guy who was a retired line technician for what's called Con Edison here, an electric company. And he's now working a forklift. He's tapped a ball. And after 3 months of being part-time, you get full benefits at Costco. It's a great thing to do. Keeps you out of the house. So it's a lot of fun.
That's going to fit in very well with a future episode in this season about those of us who are retired and choose to go back to work part-time and why. So there we go.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really important that our listeners know how they can get their hands on a copy of your book.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Did we mention we're self-published and every sale counts?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So it's available in Costco warehouses in US and Canada. The price is a little bit different in Canada, obviously. I think it's $24.99. $24.99 in Costco in Canada, and it's $19.99 in Costco in the US. But you can also get it on Amazon, online, and Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, anywhere the books are sold. And we would be grateful for every single sale.
I highly recommend this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I can easily think of 5 other people that I know of that I'm going to be giving it to for Christmas. So,
thank you.
Very excited.
Thank you.
Very excited that you've written it. And I have to ask, is there maybe going to be a sequel someday, maybe on Costco, or do you have any other projects that are in the works?
Well, that's a good question. Costco opens 25 new warehouses a year, and they have got lots of other countries that they're looking at. So that's a possibility. I think for right now, we've got our hands a little bit full because this is the entire company of Hot Dog Press right here with you right now, both of us. So the book is finished writing. A lot of our friends have said, wow, you must be so relieved. Yeah, we would be if we weren't the publishers. So we're doing that. We're doing promotion. I think maybe our next thing would be to get it translated into Korean or Japanese or Chinese and sell it abroad. The love of Costco in those Asian countries is just hard to describe. It's really fun.
Wow.
So that'd be fun. And then we have ideas for other books. Yes, I think we're not done yet, particularly having put together a good publishing team. We'd like to do some other stuff.
Nice. I may be in touch with you. I have a book in me. So.
Oh, good.
Yes. We can talk.
Excellent. We will. Absolutely.
I do not.
We'll talk
Yes,
to you
you
anyway.
do.
Was it
Oh.
the end of Huck Finn? He says, "If I'd known what trouble it was to write a book, I never would have started." Something like that.
It is a daunting project. I will tell you, January of this year, we found out we needed to cut the book in half because it would have been 600 pages instead of 272. And that was really a challenge. So writing is I have a lot of respect now for people who write books. It's tough, but it can also be very rewarding.
Oh, and there's your sequel right there. I'm hearing there's at least 300 pages on the cutting room floor, so to speak. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, I am so grateful to the two of you. Number one, for being on our podcast, and number two, for having written this delightful book. I'm so appreciative of both of you.
Thank you so much for having us on your show. On the podcast. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
So what I forgot to say earlier was, so in addition to the, 30 some page intro, the rest of the book, which is, let me check here, 300 pages, 272. Anyway, it's an A to Z, depending on where you live, collection of facts about Costco, about their products, about Costco as a business, about the different locations around the world. And the graphics are great, and it's such an easy read. It's a little bit like a picture book, to be perfectly honest. It's very graphic in nature in terms of the visuals, and very, very colorful. All the pages are a different color. And it's a fabulous book.
You know what it put me in mind of a bit, Mary Ellen, was, and I have the three versions maybe, but the original Looney Spoons that had a sense of humor and some neat graphics, and it drew you in. Like, this sounds fun. So it sort of gave me that vibe. I think perhaps David and Susan's book is a little. I think it's the graphics. Like, we've come a long way. Let's put it that way. It's a very nice to look at book for sure.
It is. It's very visually enticing.
Mm-hmm.
So following our interview with David and Susan, I bought multiple copies of the book. I really, really loved this book. And so I can't say who's getting them for Christmas because some of them are listening. But I loved the passion that they brought to this book, right? This was a passion project for them.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Susan said, I think she said when at age 35, life's too short. What do I want to do with it? And you can see when they talk about having career ADD, that they were passionate about any career that they were in while they were in it, but they were also clearly open to opportunities that came along, and they were risk takers, and they followed their passions. And you can hear that in the variety of jobs that each of them have held. And I have no doubt that they did each one well.
Yeah.
But I thought the career ADD was really funny. And it reminded me of what we talked a little bit about actually in episode 1, where I shared one of the current trends is that people in their 50s and 60s are looking to take on a second career and leave their original one so that they can pursue something that is more in alignment with who they are, what they're passionate about, even if it means less money.
Yeah. And when you speak about their career ADD, a term I love, by the way, it means that I'll hop from one career to the other if I'm passionate about the next thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Like David worked in the U.S. State Department.
Yep.
And, you get there, you think, okay, you've reached oh no, he decides to go into investment banking. Then he was a company headhunter, then back to banking.
Yeah.
And then Susan in 2005, they joined together and they started having a headhunting firm of their own.
Yeah.
And then, in Susan's beginnings, she decided, to her parents' chagrin, she wants to be a pastry chef.
Yeah.
Was likely, I would have liked to have sampled that. Maybe if she goes back to that, we can have her back on and get some samples.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that would naturally lead into working as a TV commercial producer, because who hasn't done both? It's almost like one's a prerequisite. And then started the professional work with David. And, it's a pretty incredible background that they came into this, but then to settle into deciding to work on this book together. That's a neat kind of whole, like that whole circuit of what they went through and then came together, worked together, and now they're working together in retirement. I'll put that in air quotes. On book projects.
Well, I mean, obviously they love working together, and they work so well together, right? They're really focused on fun as well as being very practical.
Mm-hmm.
So much effort went into getting this book off the ground. 22 publishers turned them down. And I think the other 2 publishers that they heard back from who did make them an offer, it was sufficient for them to say, okay, maybe we could do better if we were to publish it ourselves.
Yeah.
And like, just that must be, in hindsight, like looking in the rearview mirror, what they had to pull together to make that happen is daunting.
Yes.
But they just put one foot in front of the other. And, that's Susan's advice, right? If it's not for the faint of heart, but if there's something you're passionate about and you want to do, go for it, right? Yeah. Absolutely go for it. We've talked about that on previous seasons.
Of course, it would be fun to join them on the research to all the Costco's.
Yeah, they've traveled to so many different places in the globe. They've been around the globe 8 times, essentially, for the number of air miles that they've racked up. It's phenomenal.
And if anybody's an expert, they are, right?
Yeah,
there's no denying that.
No, like 13 countries in addition to, the mainland United States. Not that Costco has one in every state. I think 46 of the states there's a Costco. They've been to Puerto Rico, and then 13 other countries, 200 warehouses and counting. Wild.
Some of the interesting facts too, like to highlight just a few of them. I found it fascinating. I know Costco is huge, but also they don't carry every available item. They tend to specialize, and that, of course, what they have takes up a lot of space. But I didn't realize that 3,800 items is where they try to draw the line. Yeah, and they curate them regularly. And by way of example, as David pointed out, that a Walmart, for example, would have over 140,000 items as compared to 3,800. So that's and I think you brought up the point during the interview too about if you see it, might better you get it because it may not be there next time around because they do turn over.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have 2 sisters and a sister-in-law. We all frequent different Costco's in different cities. And so if one of us finds something exciting, that's always a really good deal at the Costco that we're at, we immediately text the other 3 so that they can go to their Costco and check, because that's the other interesting thing, right? Is that what I have at my Costco might not be what, my sister in Ottawa has at her Costco. And it's not going to be what somebody has out in BC, and it's not going to be what you can get at the Costco in Nevada. I mean, it's like the regional items I thought was really interesting. And that's one of the most fascinating parts about the book is that when they're looking at the A to Z treasure hunt, sometimes, the letter in the alphabet stands for a particular country, and they talk about the really unique things that you can purchase at the Costco warehouse in that particular country that you're not going to find anywhere else.
Poutine, for example.
Well, yeah. So shout out to Montreal for not just poutine, Dave, but rotisserie chicken. That started in Montreal. Thank you very much. And a lot of Americans like the rotisserie chicken now, and they have Montreal to thank for that.
Now, I don't think we'll ever get on the official book review list with this question I'm about to ask you, but what's one kooky fact they threw out there and you think, oh, that fascinates me?
Oh my gosh. Well, the fact that they sell 6 million pumpkin pies from September to December, like that was kind of mind blowing. They sell half the world's cashews. What?
Yeah.
And they're the largest wine purveyor in the world. And I think
who knew?
The largest purveyor of olive oil as well. Like that's,
You could have given me many guesses on who sells the most wine in the world. And I don't know that I would have come up with Costco. And you and I've discussed this, the one that I latched onto because I've had personal experience with the product every time I go, irrespective of time of day. And that's the fact that they pointed out that Costco sells 7 times the number of hot dogs each year than North American sports stadiums combined. Yeah. And that is just, and I mean, I don't know what it is where you're listening from out there, but here locally, I think it's $1.50. You get the hot dog, you get a drink with it.
Yeah.
Whether you want the
And
drink or not, you're getting it. And they're
that's been the price since 1985.
It's
Dave.
that has to have been, and it's no Weasley little hot dog either. It's a
No.
full on. You've had your dinner.
Yeah. One other thing that I picked out of the book that I wanted to share with listeners is about their produce. So what they do when produce comes into the warehouse, they check every pallet with a hand thermometer. And so when, a shipment comes in that is rejected, it's either rerouted to another retailer that maybe has different standards, or if they find something that, is not at its peak after they've already accepted it, so maybe it doesn't sell within a couple of days, it's culled and it's frozen, and then it's either sent to a food bank or an animal sanctuary.
Yeah, that's nice.
And I thought that, that the one of the things that I learned about Costco in reading this book is the amazing sort of business culture and mentality that is the complete opposite of what you think of when you think of most big companies, right? And their culture is so different and so unique. And as a result, customers are very loyal, and so are their employees.
Yeah, they mentioned that too. Yeah, there's a high retention of employees, which in a fast-paced, hard work place like that, that it would be maybe intuitive that people aren't, staying long, but they certainly do seem to keep their people there. They treat them well, apparently.
They do. They treat them really well. And I think Susan was mentioning in the interview that approximately half their employees are full-time, but half of them are part-time. And a lot of those part-time employees are retirees. So they're older adults, and they get full benefits after 3 months, full benefits, which is phenomenal. And during COVID, I mean, this really speaks to, sort of who Costco is as a corporate employer. There were no layoffs at Costco during COVID, and older adults over a certain age were told to stay home and be paid so that they wouldn't be at risk.
Yeah.
I just think that's really, it's really encouraging in this day and age. So a thank you to David and Susan. I loved your book. I want everybody to go out and buy one because I think it's amazing. It makes a great gift at this time of year. Well, it makes a great gift any time of year, but it's, as we approach the different holidays that happen in December, and gift giving is high on everyone's mind, you can buy this book, The Joy of Costco, a treasure hunt from A to Z, at any Costco in Canada and the US. You can buy it online at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and probably in any local independent bookseller near you, you will find this book. We are going to give away a copy of this book to a lucky listener, but you will have to check out our socials. So follow us on Instagram or Facebook. You can also find us on X. You can visit us on the website. But the information, the contest to win your very own copy of this book can be found on our Instagram and Facebook pages.
Okay. Good reason to go there.
Absolutely.
With all this talk of books, I'm trying to get my head around there's so much going on in my head, as you know. And I find that there's lots in the files in there. I just can't retrieve them. But I know there's a whole lot of funny stuff. So I was just going to put out a book of jokes, and I think it's a winner. I think David and Susan are going to want to grab this. I want to get in ahead of you. For example, you ready?
I am.
Did you hear about the racing snail who got rid of his shell?
No.
Yeah, he thought it would make him faster, but instead it made him sluggish.
Oh my God.
There was nowhere in our content today to work that in.
No, clearly.
No, I went a long way around to get to there. And
you did.
And as you would say, dear listeners, thank you for your patience.
Yes.
Let's move on to something more important. Our next episode.
Yes.
We will be talking dollars and cents. See what I did there? With financial planner Joe Curry. Joe specializes in helping people plan their finances for their retirement and what you can do at any time to make sure you are living the life in retirement that you expected and how to plan for the legacy that you're hoping to leave for others. So join us next time on Money Talks with Joe Curry on our next episode.
So this episode is airing on December the 8th for the first time. And here in Canada, that is Sounds of the Season on CBC, which is our public radio. And Sounds of the Season raises funds for food banks in major urban cities across Canada. And at this time of year, especially, we think about the fact that there are lots of families moving into the month of December who unfortunately are going to have to tap into food banks. So I want to take this opportunity to encourage listeners to donate as they're able to their local food bank. If you're not able to do that in the month of December, and maybe you find in January or February you can, please don't hesitate to make that donation. That is something that we're going to be talking about later on this season, possibly into season 4, is the fact that food bank usage is up by older adults significantly right now. And so if you can, every little bit helps. If you can donate even a can of tomatoes, or a jar of peanut butter, or whatever you can, financial donations are also gratefully accepted. We would really appreciate you doing that. Oh, and happy Hanukkah to those of you who celebrate that holiday, as it starts today as well. So until next week, I'm Mary Ellen.
And I'm Dave.
Stay well.
You've been listening to the Retirement Years Podcast, social media marketing and management provided by Madison Sloan at MSS Mad Media. Original music by Theodora Draper. Web design by Gavin Hinton.